Welcome to Three Men and a War Game. I'm Paul, and I'm still painting Infinity.
Hey, I'm Kevin, and I am not painting Infinity at all. I'm done painting Infinity
and
for
I'm
now.
And I'm Potter, and I'm about to build Infinity. And as we segue into our topic, that's going to help a lot because we're talking about hobby tools. And I'm going to be using a lot of them building these Infinity models.
Hobby tools.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Hobby tools are good.
Hobby tools. So that's what we're talking about today.
Tools of the trade, including maybe some tools that you might not be using or might not be thinking about using.
Yep.
And tools you probably should be using.
Yeah.
But first off, how have those tools been helping you guys out in your hobby progress?
Pretty good, actually. I've been putting some fun tools like toothpicks and thumb compressors to use today, making some water bases for my Kings of War army, sculpting some waves.
Nice.
Nice.
So that's what I've been working on really, is working on the next set of my Trident Realm army for Kings of War. Also working on my Valkyrie model for Crisis Protocol. And I painted 5 Gene Stealer cults in about 2 hours of total hobby time, which is feeling pretty good, actually.
Nice.
God, I hate you sometimes.
What about you, Paul? What you been up to?
Well, painting Infinity, and I added a new tool to my repertoire this week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I got myself a wet palette, which is super exciting. Picked it up end of last week, but finally popped it open yesterday and just kind of messing around with it, learning it, figuring it out, seeing what it can do.
Very cool.
And so far, it's been interesting.
A lot is the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I think we'll get into that a little bit more depth as we talk about our topic today.
Yeah, most likely, because it's a pretty good tool.
Yep. So for me, I've been kind of lax this week. I did find my Vanguard Space Marines that I bought when they first came out. A year ago, 2 years ago, whenever those models came out.
Right.
So I've been building.
Been that long?
Yeah, it's been a minute. So, I've built the snipers and I've built the lieutenant out of that kit, and then I've been waiting for a lot of some materials to come in via Amazon and stuff for my airbrush, some new cleaners, some gloss varnish, stuff like that I need. So I've got it. The last of it will be here tomorrow, so I'll be able to start trying to make some more headway onto these Space Marines, as well as my Pano now that I've got my Kalstrom kit. So I've got a ton of Infinity to build as well too.
Sweet.
It's going to be a busy time.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to someday actually being able to play with you with them.
Which ones, the Marines or the Pano?
Yes.
The appropriate answer.
Yes, I'm just anxiously awaiting to get out there and be able to give all this stuff a go.
Yeah, man, you'll be able to use those Infinity models to play some Star Breach or possibly Grimdark Future, the Firefight version with Potter's Space Marines and his Infinity stuff.
Yep.
I'll have some Necrons for that as well, right? Because I have a ton of them.
Cool. So, guys, main topic, hobby, tools of the trade. So we kind of want to make an episode where we can talk about some things directed at new hobbyists, maybe some experienced hobbyists as well, things that you might not have, things that you do with them that might be unorthodox, and just in general, stuff you should have around your hobby desk that will help you with things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So some obvious we're going to talk about and some not obvious because we want to give a good, well-rounded piece of advice here. So let's
like a cup of water, which I'm going to go get.
There you go. Yeah, a cup of water that is something you should probably have. And to dip in that water, the thing in every hobbyist arsenal in this hobby, paint brushes. So there's all sorts of paintbrushes. If you're just getting into the hobby, it can be pretty intimidating. It's really easy to just cop out and buy some Citadel brushes. I would advise against it. They're a little overpriced. They're fine, and they'll get you through your first, however many models. Well, maybe a lot of models, depending on how good a care you take of the brushes. But let's talk a little bit about what you actually should be looking for. And there's a lot of debate about synthetic and natural hair brushes. I think there are pros and cons to both sides. I prefer natural hair brushes. I use natural hair acrylic size 0 or size 1 brushes. Potter, I don't know. How do you feel? You're another person who cares a lot about this.
Yeah. I've found that the best use of my brushes that I've gotten have been the synthetic ones. And I am at the same point. I mainly paint actually with a size 2 brush is my main go-to one. The size 1's when I'm getting into that finer detail, and I'll use a size 3 as well too, more for just kind of base coating large areas. So yeah, I stay to the 1 to 3 range of the size of the brushes.
And I go.
I always like the 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1's kind of that sweet spot.
Yeah, I don't know.
2 and 3 are good for base coating for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. I mean, the Winsor Newton number 2, the size 2, I think is actually technically smaller than I think most, like the Da Vinci's or the Rosemary and Co. I think the Winsor ones the number 2s are slightly smaller than theirs. So I think that's probably why I like the number 2, because the number 2 I use a Winsor Newton. So I probably maybe going into those other brushes might go into a 1 like you guys are talking about.
Yeah. Well, getting into that, what brand? I mean, we mentioned a couple brands. What are you using, Paul, brand wise?
Right now I'm using Army Painter.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and even though I had some trouble with them that I've talked about on the show initially, they're starting to hang out pretty well, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm happy with them. They're not fraying after a single use. So whatever bad batch I got, it's not a permanent problem.
Nice. I'm using. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, so for right now, I'm really happy with how they're going for me.
Cool. Yeah, I use Artist Loft Vienna, which you can get them at Michael's, and then also Rosemary and Co., which I ordered direct.
Yeah, how was that shipping wise for you? Because I was looking at ordering direct from as well, because I know it's hard to get those here in the States sometimes. Not
cheap, but they're good brushes. I ordered a bunch at a time, right? I ordered 2 of each, 0, 1, and 2. Mm-hmm. So it helped offset the price. And the shipping's not bad, right? Because it's a lightweight package, but it's still international shipping.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I was looking at those, or the Broken Toad ones as well. But then there's a Kickstarter actually going on right now.
Squidmar.
Squidmar. He's a YouTube painter. He has actually been working with Da Vinci, and he has made his own line of brushes. And I think it was like $53 for the Kickstart. I think there was like 500. Whatever his currency is I think he's Swedish
kroners.
Yeah. So it was I think it's like $53, and you get, I want to say it's either 3 or 4 brushes, and then the next pledge up is I think it's around $70 there for that one, and that one gives you, I believe, 5 brushes, because it gives you 2 additional brushes. So if the smaller pledge is 3 brushes, then that gives you 5. If it's 4 brushes, it'll give you 6. Because I do know it's just the 900 one is +2. So I actually been thinking about grabbing those, because they're not Kolinsky. It starts with a T. Tobolinski's, I think it was Tobolinski's Sable brushes. So they are synthetics, but I do know Da Vinci's good.
If it's that sounded like a natural hair, which would be better. Right?
I'm pretty sure on the Kickstarter it said it is a synthetic. I'm pulling the Kickstarter up right now.
Neat.
But so and if anybody knows anything, Da Vinci's out of Germany, and they're a very well received, highly reputable paintbrush company.
Either way, that's really cool. And for the higher end paintbrushes, $12 to $13 per brush is actually pretty normal.
Yep.
I think that's a very good price for high quality brushes. So yeah, very, very, very cool. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Paul, about the brushes at all?
No, I think that about covers it, honestly. Although you know what, I will say I've used the Artist Loft ones that you were talking about, and I've liked those in the past too for an inexpensive brush.
Yeah, they're very nice. Very, very nice. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to our next topic, which is what you should be, with the actual act of painting miniatures, right? Like when you're holding a miniature, there's something to be said for having plinths around.
Hell yeah.
Yes, sir.
I think it's very obvious. I think a lot of people will be like, duh, of course you need that. But like, it's a thing that if you've never used one before and you're used to, I just think there are people out there that are holding their bases. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I did that for a long time.
Yeah, I was like,
man.
I'm one of them. I mean, I started, painting miniatures probably when I've been playing since I was 12, but I didn't really start painting my own miniatures until I was like 18. And from 18 till about whenever GW put out their ergonomical plinth is how long I was holding bases. And that's, that was what, maybe 4 years ago, they put that product out.
Yeah. If you're doing that, stop it.
Yes. Do yourself a favor. Go buy cork. You can make your own plinths by just buying some like big cork from Michael's or any other kind of craft store. Buy yourself one of these special ones. There's one I know that there was a Kickstarter a while ago. I think Epic Duck uses it, and it spins.
Yeah, so those are great. But let's not kid ourselves. If you're in the U.S., you probably have some pill bottles, guy. Yeah, I know it. And a really easy thing to do with especially like a Walgreens pill bottle. What I like to do is just throw a bunch of metal shit in there, like a bunch of screws and bolts to weigh it down. And then you put some poster tack on it and you can stick your bases right on there. And I don't care how big your fucking meat hooks are, man. You can hold on to that bad boy.
And I'm going to one up you even more because it's something that we all have. Old paint pots.
Yeah, I was about to say.
You got old GW paint pots laying around there. Fantastic.
Yeah, if you've ever seen my pictures, that's all I use for plinths is my OG.
What I think is even better than the old school blacktop GW paint pots is the current P3 paint pots.
That's what I was about to say. Is I've used the P3 ones because they're larger. So if you've got any of the coat to arms ones before Citadel transferred out of that one, if you want to talk about old paint pots, those would work good too. Those are about the same size as the P3 ones.
Yeah,
those are the ones that Chops uses.
Yep,
those are good ones.
They're awesome. They are mad awesome.
I've used that, and I've used just plain gone to Michael's, bought some cork, and drilled a pin into the model, and boom, there you go.
But honestly, the amount of control you get from having the model on a plinth is just non-replaceable.
Yep.
So if you're not doing that, please do it. It's a bottle or something and some poster tack. And that covers poster tack. I will say, I don't know if you guys have any advice. Because there's a lot of different companies that make tack. And I like the Loctite blue tack. I feel like that stuff
that's what
is
I buy.
like that one. Some of the other ones like stick and have residue and they're hard to get off, but I've never had an issue with the Loctite blue tack. It's like just tacky enough to stick to it, but it doesn't like come off when you're peeling the models off of it.
Yeah, I use so I went out to Home Depot and just grabbed a ton of paint stir sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And I slapped blue tack on that and put my models on there. And back when before I got an airbrush, when I rattle can prime, that's what I would put my models on and just have so I could do a whole 10-man squad on that paint stick. All of them tacked down by blue tack. I have probably maybe replaced the blue tack maybe after five times of pulling up, putting down models.
Oh, I'll say mine lasts. It'll last even longer than that. You just got to refold it. It'll last for a while.
Maybe it's me being a little bit lazy, not refolding. But yeah, I mean, you get some good use out of it. One of the other things I use blue tack for is if I want to do sub assemblies, but I still want to play with my models. blue tack is an excellent way of like making sure like that head or that gun arm is on there, so you can do your subassembly painting and not have to worry about losing. Test fitting and not losing that piece when you're still playing with that model.
For sure. Yeah, it's really
good.
And
that was the other thing I was going to add about blue tack, and you kind of touched on it there, Chris, is the infamous like 3 or 4 point gun arms.
Right.
Where each arm is separate and then you're still trying to match up the gun. Mm-hmm. So using some blue tack to help figure out exactly how that's going to line up.
Yep.
That'll help your life.
Using small amounts of it as well too. If you pin models for like if you're using metal models, you could do the same thing. When you drill in one side, put a small amount of blue tack on it, line up the model, and then press in with where you've already pinned. Put in like your pin on the other side, and now you've got a perfect location to where you start your drilling on the other side, so you don't get anything off askew or anything like that.
Absolutely.
And then real quick, since you brought up Loctite, the Loctite gel super glue, can't live without it.
Let's talk about glue, because glue is a contentious issue, I think.
It can be. It very much can be.
Yeah.
Like people are like pitchfork and tiki torch ready to go after you if you don't use their glue.
And I feel like I use a series of different glues. And what I'll say is for pure assembly, I use Loctite Gel Control Super Glue, which is what Paul's talking about. It is the best. It comes out pretty thick, and it also does a pretty good job holding. And it's got, I think it's a 7-second cure time, not total cure, but 7 seconds to when you can stop holding. It's it's a little fast, right? And you want to test fit because once you glue something down, it can be kind of a bitch, but it's also really easy to work with. And it does a little bit of work filling gaps.
Yep.
It's
the thing for me, Kevin, the reason why I love it so much is that I'm usually a mess when it comes to gluing. So inevitably, if I use a liquid glue, I don't realize it, but it's running down the side of the model, regardless of how little I try to put on there, and then I'm glued to the damn thing.
Yeah, you can have that.
I mean, that's
that's why I like the gel, because it stays in place.
I mean, my fingers are covered in super glue right now because unlike you guys, I've never used the Loctite stuff. That's not true. I've used it, Paul, like when I borrowed it off you for a broken mini at the store. But my assembly, I mean, honestly, I just go with usually whatever's at the hobby store because that's where I'm at. And for the most part, there's going to be 2 super glues or 1 super glue really now, since GW really doesn't promote their super glue anymore. Is just the Zap-A-Gap stuff. That's what I use for my super glue because it's just at my local gaming store, and I just grab what they got.
They carry Loctite, this Loctite glue at Home Depot, Michael's, Walmart, and
grocery stores.
Grocery
stores too.
You can get it anywhere. But I will say though that the other one, and this is a piece of my hobby kit that's pure gold, and I've talked about my emergency kit before, and it's also my emergency kit, and that's Tamiya thin cement, plastic cement. You'll know it because it comes in a bottle, looks like a nail polish bottle, and it has a brush applicator. And this stuff is purpose use for me, and that is for erasing thin lines in plastic. So if you've got like joins in plastic models, it's a thin join. Like it's so thin that if you were going to use like green stuff, you'd have to roll it out, flatten it on, and then like sand it down with a file it down. You can literally use Tamiya on it and the gap will disappear.
Oh, that's good to know because like I said, I got these eliminators, and since they're the easy to build models, the cloaks have seam lines in them. So I was going to green stuff them and just, again, same kind of thing, just smooth it down. But now I'll definitely take a look. I found a place, one of our local stores actually carries Tamiya product line. So now I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, I would check it out.
Hangar 18 probably has that.
You want to be a little careful because the reason it works is because it melts the plastic, right?
Well, that's what all plastic cement does, is a chemical reaction that melts the plastic.
Yeah, but those small gaps will just disappear. They're just gone. See ya.
Yeah, so there's another question for glue for you guys as well too. When building plastic models, plastic cement or super glue?
Super glue for all assembly. Always
Loctite gel, baby.
Yep. Every single piece of assembly for metal models. If there are heavy pieces, I will combine that with pinning. But that's it. I never mess with 2-part epoxy. It's just, there are some tricks you can do with super glue, but really just super glue and a pin will help for heavy pieces. But yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, see, I used to be a plastic glue guy with plastic models, but I've been moving away from it and just doing super glue.
I don't have the patience for it.
See, I used the GW plastic cement, and it really didn't. I really could just set the models together and just put them down, and then leave them alone, and they wouldn't move, they wouldn't anything. I never had an issue.
Welcome to using Loctite gel.
Yeah, Loctite gel the same way. Yeah,
well, I'll have to look at that with these Infinity models then.
You'll have to probably let it hold it together a little bit longer. So one of the other tricks that you can use is if you file where it's gluing together, it'll go together a lot quicker as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually use a drill bit tip, like a really thin drill bit tip, and I just scrape on the inside to break the surface.
I've even used an Exacto knife to cut into it a little bit, like make an X out of it just to create a little extra grip.
Yep.
Huh. Okay.
And once you do that, man, you get a real solid bond. Especially on some of those joints where they're keyed together and it's just flat, almost polished metal. You want to mar it up so the super glue has places to reach into.
Right. Gotcha.
So that's super glue. But I want to talk about one other adhesive that is a just wondrous little thing, and that is E6000. Yeah. And I said I always use super glue in assembly, but I will also combine super glue with E6000 where I have that's another, if you don't want to pin, you can use E6000. So if you've never used E6000 before, E6000 is basically an industrial strength bonding agent. It smells like absolute shit. That's how you know it works. It's terrible. But it is also the strongest adhesive. Like it makes an almost permanent unbreakable bond, once you've used it. And if you need some proof on it, I'm sure you could go look at cosplay videos because cosplayers use E6000 on their outfits. It's like almost the adhesive of choice for making cosplay stuff. And that stuff has to be swung around and worn and hold up through convention. So it's like no joke adhesive. I use it for assembly, but I also use it for magnets. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we actually get into magnets. But E6000 is, I think, something that every hobbyist should have. Just because when you need something a little bit stronger, there is no substitute for it. It is incredibly powerful.
Very cool.
And then there's also the last and overlooked PVA glue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, guys.
Yeah, you need that for your bases.
Boy, you sure do. PVA glue, because it dries clear, is so useful for so many things. All my bases, I glue down, I water down PVA like 50-50. So I'll put a little PVA into a pallet well, and then I'll put about as much water as I put glue. And then you just mix that up into a slurry, and that stuff will glue anything to, like, if you've got basing material, that stuff will just stick everything down, permanently adhere it, and disappear.
Yep. It's great stuff. I used tacky glue for the same stuff for a while, but not to create the slurry, just more for when I was, doing big chunks of sand with stuff with that had a little bit larger like rocks and seashells and stuff like that in it, so that it got a little bit of a stronger bond doing it that way.
Well, and because PVA is actually where everyone else calls it in the world, it's not really actually called that in the U.S. It's just a thing we all throw around. We're talking about Elmer's white glue.
Right.
Yep.
Just plain old white glue or wood glue. Wood glue is also PVA.
But what you're buying your kids for school, and
Yeah.
you're going into, the local, Walmart or Target, and you're paying 79 cents for a tiny bottle that's going to last you 6 years.
Or if you're like me, you spent $8.50 on a gallon.
Yeah. Woo, that's commitment there.
Well, so I make a lot of terrain, and in my terrain making, we'll probably do a terrain episode at some point. I have a spray bottle that has a 75-25 mix, a 75% water, 25% PVA that I use for spraying down and sealing terrain. That's why I have a gallon.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit.
We'll go through that.
But that's also, if you're making bases and you're gluing cork to stuff, PVA all the way.
100%. Until you're putting the model on it, then you want some super glue, but to get it on the base,
And if you're building if you bought some nice TinkerTurf terrain, or you're assembling Infinity terrain and you want it to be permanently glued, PVA is your jam. It's just the way to go.
And clamps. If you're gonna do TinkerTurf, you want some clamps.
That's another. So clamps are another tool of the trade that I had listed, and there's actually other reasons you want clamps.
Clamps.
All right. So I'll tell you the main thing I use clamps for. So Potter talked about sub-assemblies, and I don't paint in sub-assemblies that often. I prefer to just glue whole models together and paint it however the fuck it went together. But sometimes that's more trouble than it's worth, and you have to paint in sub-assemblies. So what I do with sub-assemblies is I will put so I get a paper clip, right? And I unfold the paper clip and I put a big ass glob of poster tack at the end of it. And then I stick whatever my sub-assembly is on that. And then on the other side of the paper clip, clamp. And then the clamp just is sitting on your table. And when you need to paint the sub-assembly, you pick up the clamp like a plinth.
Right.
And you manipulate it. So clamps are good for holding things down while you're PVA gluing them. And they're also great for sub-assembly manipulation. So if you don't have a good set of clamps, most hardware stores, you can buy a plastic tube full of plastic clamps for $3.
Yeah, see, I've never done that. I've always just stuck the pin into some blue tack or some cork.
Oh no, I use a clamp because you can hold the clamp.
Right. Well, the cork I hold. What do you mean? The cork I put it in would be kind of like plinth shaped, so that would I could hold it that way ergonomically.
Does it balance well? That would be my concern. The nice thing about the clamp is it won't tip over ever, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if it's a big chunk of metal or a huge piece of plastic, you've got some issues. But I'm usually, when it's sub-assembly and I'm putting stuff like that, it's more the smaller pieces like heads, guns, swords, hand pieces, stuff that's going to be in the way of me painting the detail behind it. So it's usually smaller.
Sure. But yeah, clamps. Buy some clamps.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, clamps.
Everybody watch Futurama.
And we're not really talking about terrain making now, but a hot glue gun goes a long way in terrain making too. So hot glue is also another type of glue and a toolkit in a hobbyist arsenal that we'll talk about later. But let's move on to our next thing that every hobbyist should have, and that is a palette. Whether that is a plastic well palette or a wet palette, and really both, because there are lots of hobby products now where you're going to want both. So if you're ever using inks or shades or contrast paint, a wet palette is not really good use of your wet palette to put those kind of things on there. So then you want a well palette. And what we're talking about by a well palette is a piece of plastic that's got the bottom of an egg shape 6 to 12 times in it for putting paint in it. You can usually pick them up for between 50 cents and $1 from hobby stores. So I've got a few of them, and then every once in a while I have a really fun exercise where you can peel a whole sheet of paint out of one, because
that's my favorite thing ever.
They just get paint all over them like dragon armor, like dragon scales. And you can just peel the paint out of it like a sheet. It's pretty awesome.
It's like the reward for painting a bunch of models.
Yeah, for sure. So that's that, but also wet palettes. So Paul, you're just getting into wet palette. Why don't you talk about it? Because right now you're fiercely enamored, and you're the right person to talk about what the application of a wet palette is and what you've seen from it thus far.
All right. So basically the wet palette, the idea of it is that it keeps your paint wet. so it doesn't dry out as quick. So you don't end up with those chunks of paint to pull out of your palette like Kevin was talking about. But what it allows you to do is it allows that paint to last a bit longer because it is staying damp. And all it is basically a sponge with some water in the sponge and a piece of parchment paper over it. And then water is able to pass through the parchment paper into your paint. So it also thins it a bit too, which is kind of a nice touch. So it goes on real smooth. And the other thing that it's really good for, since it stays wet, it's really good for if you're into mixing your own colors. You can do that on there. And if you're using dropper bottles, you can get the exact amount of paint that you want. And you know that you're doing 5 and 1 or, 9 and 1 or 5 and 5. So you can get those real exact things and then just stir it up right there on the parchment paper and you're good to go. And if you don't use it all, you close up your wet palette, put it off to the side, and tomorrow when you start painting again, you don't have to mix new paint. And that's what really turned me onto it, is that I got tired of thinning paint and doing it every time I sat down.
Yeah, and like being able to preserve your blends through like a week of painting a unit is so nice.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, and there's all different ways that you can go about doing a wet palette. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube for how to make your own.
Oh, I can walk you through that because that's my little trick.
And yeah, exactly. And Potter's been using his own for quite a long time with your Chinese takeout container.
Yeah, literally it's just any kind of Tupperware container that's got so you can seal it, and just obviously make it so it's not like a big bowl. Like do something that's got a shallow bowl or something like that. And it's just folded up napkin that you lay at the bottom of it with parchment paper. I'm working on the same roll of parchment paper that I bought when I started this hack, and I started doing this hack maybe 4 or 5 years ago because I used to use the Privateer Press set that they had, and I just got tired of buying the sheets of paper from them. So somebody was like, "Hey, just grab some parchment paper." I'm still on the same roll. It's been years. That's all I use it for. So then you just put that in it, throw your water in it, and again dump it out once you find your level that you need of your water, and boom, you're good to go. Now, downside of it is these ones that you can buy off the internet, they're typically much larger, so you have a lot more of a workspace to work with. With these, the one I'm using, obviously it's much smaller, so you will go through things a little bit faster, and you have a higher risk of mold in the tub as well too, because it is not getting as good of a seal as you can get from one of these ones like the Army Painter one like you got, Paul, or the Everlasting wet palette that's a very popular one out there, or the P3 one as well too. So you do run that risk of that mold in the hack.
Yeah, I just measured mine. Mine's 7 by 8.5 inches, so it's a pretty big workspace.
Right.
Yeah, yours that one, the Masters one seems to be pretty large. But the other thing too, Chris, is if you're concerned about mold, especially if you have like well water, buying a gallon of distilled water for like 80 cents.
Oh, I have distilled water because that's what I use in my airbrush.
Yeah, that's the way to go, I think. And then the other thing that I saw people saying is that put some copper in your well, in your container that the sponge is sitting in, and apparently that helps. So, like if you have a penny, that's actually a copper penny, that works. Or if you have a little bit of copper wire, put that in there. And apparently, copper is just naturally antimicrobial, and it helps.
Did not know
All
that.
right. I didn't know that either. Good tip. So that's the wet palette.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and so far, after 2 days of using it, I've really been enjoying it.
Very nice.
All right. So another essential piece of hobby kit for me is a set of small drill bits and a pin vise.
Yes.
So if you've never heard of a pin vise is a hand drill. Has very small drill bits. And what you're going to use that for is basically drilling into your model to make, when we say pinning, what you're doing is you're drilling into your model and then you're using a piece of like a brass rod, or in my case, I just use paper clips. I unfold paper clips and cut them with flush cutters. And that's what I use. And that's for bracing things like you can attach an arm to a torso on a metal model, or you can basically permanently affix a model to a base.
Okay, Kevin, can I get you to go back 1 second? What type of cutters?
Flush cutters.
Flush with a U, right?
Yes.
Okay, because it sounded like you said flesh cutters.
Oh, no. Flush cutters.
I wanted to be very clear on what you were talking about.
Yeah, so a flush cutter is a cutting tool that cuts a completely straight cut. So not a bevel cutter or a cutter that cuts an edge. It cuts a straight through. Yeah.
And definitely not a steak knife.
Not a steak knife. No, it's a cutting tool. You can get them at, for lots of reasons. For cutting wire, there's a ton of reasons to have flush cutters, but you can get them at hobby stores too. Not flush. And also just a set of small drill bits. And that again is useful, I found, for making holes for magnets. Whether you're magnetizing arms or what have you, having a set what?
Magnetized?
I was waiting for it.
Having a set of drill bits really helps to be able to drill in to exactly the size of the magnet so that you can place your magnets in for magnetization. And you're not going to be using an electric drill because you would drill right through your model. You just by hand twist it, which is
it can
onerous.
You can get a hand cramp pretty quick doing that, but yeah.
But it's worth it because you only have to do it once and then your model is real nice.
It's nice and sturdy.
So that's a pin vise and drill bits. So do you guys use those tools?
Yep.
Definitely. The drill bits only usually use more when I'm working with metal models, but everything else use on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So another one, and this is going to be something that you might not think to buy, but next time you go to the craft store, buy a Putty Sculpting Kit. Sculpting kits are invaluable for doing things like working with green stuff, for example, and not just for sculpting out of green stuff, but if you need to fill a gap and then scrape away the green stuff that's excess, there's nothing better than a sculpting kit for it.
Yep.
I agree with that.
See, I've never actually done that one. I've got the individual model, sculpting tools. I've never actually thought about getting the scraper for it. That's a good call.
Yeah, buying a sculpting kit's awesome. Because there's you can get, it comes with contoured tools and all sorts of tools that are good for pulling that stuff out where you don't want it.
Yep.
And not marring the surface around it, right? It's just really, really, really useful. So a sculpting kit, big deal. Also files, guys. Buy a set of files. For mold line removal, that's really what it's for. Also, when Paul was talking about marring the surfaces of metal to make a good surface for super glue, it's another place where files are real good.
Yep. And then the other option for that, like I said earlier, is an Exacto knife, right?
Yep.
You can use that to mar the model, but then also the back side of it is really good for removing mold lines, especially on plastic or resin.
Yeah, and I will say something that's started to enter my repertoire a lot more than an Exacto knife is the GW mold line remover tool. It's a little bit bigger than an Exacto knife, so you're not going to be able to get into those fine areas sometimes. So you'll still want that Exacto knife around. But I have found that this thing works so much better than an Exacto knife when removing those plastic mold lines because of the fact that it does not leave the scratching that an Exacto knife can lead when you're trying to remove those mold lines.
Well, that's why you use the back of the Exacto. You don't use the blade.
And I never did. Yeah, no, I always use the back. But even with the back, sometimes you can get marring from it. It's Usually it's with softer plastics. I find like the Star Wars old Legion plastics from their first kits. The hard plastic ones are a little bit better, but like those softer plastics, Malifaux models I ran into the issues with. Wild West Exodus models I ran into the issue with. So those softer plastics, I would find that my Exacto knife would sometimes mar the plastic, even using the backside of it. Where this hobby knife or this GW sculpting or mold line remover tool doesn't, and honestly, like it's very easy to use. It's shaped well. It's a nice tool, and I've used it almost exclusively on all these Marines that I've been building lately.
Good tip. All right, guys, we got a couple left. One of them is a texture spreader it's a Citadel tool. It looks like a gimmick of a thing. But if you've ever used texture paint, we've talked about texture paint. You will have heard our episode all about that base. And if you're making bases, you need a texture spreader.
I need to invest in that, honestly.
Valuable. I just cannot believe it's because I think it's both the shape of both sides and the flexibility on both sides. It's just an incredible piece of kit.
When I bought it the first time, I thought it was odd that it was so flexible on both ends. But now that I've used it several times, I get why it needs that flexibility. Being too rigid would not work.
Yep, it's great. Just a great tool. I'm not going to say anything more about it other than you should have it and you should use it when you're using texture paint. That's it. You'll figure out why immediately.
Yep.
It makes spreading texture paint very easy, and it also, like, you can do all sorts of things like just tap down on it, and as you tap, some of it sticks to it, and it makes a really nice pattern and natural pattern to the texture itself. So it's a very, very good, like for stippling, right? It's very good. Highly recommended. So the last one, magnets. I know, a lot of people like foam. I'm a magnet guy. So for me, magnets are the way. I will scream magnets from the rooftops, man. They are the best. For transporting models, I use neodymium rare earth magnets. You can get them on Amazon or from lots of places online. If you just search rare earth magnets. The Magnet Baron is a person in the 40K community that has lots of magnet accessories and magnets you can buy. But I highly recommend neodymium rare earth magnets. And in the varieties that I like them are 5mm by 1mm, 8mm by 1mm, and 8mm by 2mm. And these magnets are really good for gluing to the bottom of your bases and then sticking to sheet metal, cake pans, magnetic cases, all sorts of things for transporting your models. And then you can also buy even smaller ones, like 2 by 1mm, for doing things like magnetizing gun arms and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's one I want to look into next with now that GW started making a lot of these multi-part kits. That's definitely something I'm looking for, is the what you're saying with the gun arms. I've never really done it in the past, and I want to try that out now.
Yeah, really good. Like, I was looking at getting into either Adeptus Titanicus at some point or Warcaster, obviously, and those both really require magnetizing.
Yep.
So that you can keep your collection good and you don't have to buy multiple models.
Were the Neo Mechanica models, weren't they set up so this way they're very easy to put magnets in?
You still have to drill out the holes.
You have to drill out the holes still. Okay.
But I believe they're marred or like
they're sculpted with surface area so that you can make, I think it's 5mm at every contact point for everything where you would have multiple weapon options.
Or at least designed with the intent of you magnetizing them.
That's right. But like Adeptus Titanicus, the holes are there. Like there are spots to just glue magnets into the arms.
Gotcha.
I thought that's what Privateer had
done. No,
not.
Doug Hamilton, I think, showed that they're not pre-drilled. You still have to do a little work, but every one of them has a very obvious space where you drill your magnets, and there's enough room.
Sure.
That kind of stinks because I've known Privateer in the past has actually done it with like Bethane and Belphegor. That model was designed and it came with its own magnets, which was awesome. And it was sculpted and built in a way for you to put the magnets in it because the models were interchangeable on how you did things with the caster.
Well, that's awesome that they did that, but I don't think it's like that for Warcaster. Anyway, though, magnets, man, they're awesome. All right, guys, so we've talked about all our stuff. So now I want to talk about if you guys have any secret tech. I'm sort of surprising you guys with this. I have one. So my thing that I would recommend every single hobbyist to buy that we haven't talked about so far, because we talked about all the obvious stuff, is makeup brushes. Oh boy, go buy a set of makeup brushes. So you can go to Target. Really, I recommend Target. Target's the best, or Walmart. Those are the best places to get them. And get yourself a cheap set of makeup brushes. You go to the makeup section and you'll find them immediately. There are lots of sizes of them. Really what you want is a set of round makeup brushes in different sizes. And what you want this for is dry brushing. There is no better tool for dry brushing than makeup brushes. I will never go back ever in my life to anything other than makeup brushes for dry brushing. It's the only dry brush technique that I've ever found that leaves a consistent surface without too much like cloudiness that you get from dry brushing with what people usually use, which is like old, crusty, stiff brushes. They just don't do the same style work that makeup brushes do. So buy a set of makeup brushes. Trust me, mine are bright pink and girly AF. I love them.
I bought one on your recommendation. It's a huge MFer. So I think I wasn't trying to buy the kit, so maybe I need to go get the kit one.
Well, a big MFer is great for terrain.
Right. Yeah, this one's a big mamma jamma because I was going to try your secret hack for contrast painting.
Yeah, you need a smaller one. I'll take you a picture of the size that I use for doing those exact models. It's a much smaller makeup brush. But man, it does a lot of work.
Yeah, I don't think I've got, from a tools perspective, I don't think I've got any secret hacks that I do. I think most of my stuff is pretty mainstream.
How about you, Paul? You got any extra tricks of the trade?
I swear by my paintbrush holder. It is the dumbest thing I ever bought, and I would go back and buy it a million times.
Well, that's actually a really good point. And you should talk about why it's good to have that from a drawing perspective for the brushes.
Sure. Well, and that's just it. Like, I bought it specifically for being able to hang the paintbrushes, right? So this way, clean them, condition them, hang them. So this way the tip is down so all the water drips out instead of dripping back into the what do you guys call it?
Ferrule.
The ferrule.
The ferrule hog. So it doesn't drip back into the ferrule hog and, ruin your brush and splay the tip. Right. So that was why I originally bought it. And this thing's like shitty, like prison grade tin cup.
I was like, it looks like a tuna can with some wires attached to it.
Man, like a tuna can totally outclasses this thing in quality. But I mean, like, if you think of like an old school like prison movie and guys banging tin cups on the bars, that's exactly what this thing is. And so then it's just like, I don't know, got these like arms with the spring at the top, and the brushes just sit in the spring. But what's really cool about it is that it's got the cup at the bottom, and it's got this little wire, almost like a basket in there. And it took me a while before I figured out what this was, but you put water in it, and then when you're trying to get your paint off of your brush, you just drag the brush over the wire.
Yep, it's like
over the little basket,
cheese grater kind of thing that pulls the paint off.
Yeah. So it pulls the paint off, so you're not like stirring it in your cup and then dragging it across your paper towel to get the paint off and then ruining your brush. So this little like $3-4 thing that I got at Michael's a decade ago is my secret tech.
There you go. No, that's great.
Everybody should go and buy one. It'll change your life.
I recommend it. I also so I have a lot of paintbrushes, and the paintbrushes, the way that I hang them is I use my clamps. And I have a piece of cork on my hobby desk, and I put a thumbtack into the cork, and then I put the clamp at the end of the brush, and then hang the clamp on the thumbtack.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah,
and it holds the brushes tip down.
I'm actually looking at making my own wall-mounted paint rack that hold all my paints in. And one of the sections on the rack is going to be an area for me to put all my brushes, so that when I'm done with them, I could. Well, no. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a piece of wood at the bottom, and I'll put another piece of wood, about 5-6 inches from that, so I can set the brushes into it, and I'll drill the holes so that way the brushes won't be able to wiggle around and get loose.
Got it. Yeah.
So that's how I'm gonna do it.
Anyway, yeah. So that's it. Hobby tools. Final thoughts,
Yeah,
guys.
I hope this helps. I hope we were able to tell you guys something about a tool that you may have been looking at, thinking about getting, and hopefully we'll help convince you to go that route or find something that you didn't know about before and help you out in your progress.
Yeah, and literally all these things, I own all of them. Like, it's a thing. These weren't like nice to haves, and I guess some of them could be considered nice to haves, but like honestly, these are things you want to have because they will help your hobby eventually.
Oh, yep. One thing we didn't talk about real quick, Dremel. If you're doing any kind of metallic work where you need hunks of stuff taken off of it, a cheap Dremel from Walmart will work great.
Yes. Also for polishing.
Yes.
Yeah. Really good.
My final thing is, don't be afraid to hobby. Don't be afraid. It's fun. And if you don't like it, find a friend. Do it with them.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. I didn't even consider the listener that might not like painting their models and they just put them together and play. But yeah, do the hobby part, man. The hobby part's great.
If you need a friend, come find me. I'll do it. I like hobbying. I'll be your friend.
Yeah, we do some hobby hangouts.
Yeah, man.
That's it. I like that final thought. I like both those final thoughts.
Cool. Well, thank you to all of our patrons for all of your support. It means the world to us. It is wonderful. It is why Kevin sounds so wonderful in your ears this week, because of the mic that you guys have provided for us, essentially. So thank you for that. And then thank you to Stack as a City for the music at the top and bottom of the show. And also come join us on our Discord. It's a great community. It's a wonderful community, and you definitely want to be a part. And then you can find us on social media. Our Twitter account and our Instagram account are growing. We're starting to get a lot of followers, so thank you for following us there. So we appreciate that. You can find out any kind of news that we have, or mostly what we've been hobbying about, because we like sharing our pictures of what we're all working on. And then I think that covers it. So thanks for listening. Oh, since I keep forgetting this, Chris, do you have anything you would like to say about your favorite superhero?
Son of a bitch.
In exchange for this really nice Pano military orders patch that I'm holding right now.
Captain America is the best.
Yeah, we got it. And on that, guys, you heard it here. Chris said Captain America is the best. Bye!